Can we look at this Heritage Foundation post? It was only a matter of time until the Heritage Foundation started saying dumb shit about Ukraine. So let's look what they said about Ukraine. On one hand, you got this picture on the left of Kiev. People riding bikes, just kind of hanging around. On the right, you've got Maui, Hawaii, burnt out homes. And they say Biden gave $700 to Hawaii victims, but he took $900 from them and sent it to Ukraine. The left is Kiev, on the right is Maui. So what the Heritage Foundation is saying is the Ukrainians, they don't need help. They're doing fine. Look at this picture. Hawaiians, they need help. They're not doing fine. Look at this picture. Now, first off, the dishonest thing to do, but I would be treating them with the same level of honesty to treat everyone else, would simply be for me to say, here's Honolulu, which is perfectly fine, and here's Bakhmut, which has been razed to the ground, and that's just one of many cities we could use. You could switch out these pictures and you could cherry pick all day. But putting that aside, because I've already talked about the people like, war, but Ukrainians have McDonald's? What? I've talked about that a million times. Ukraine is a very big country. You can't expect all of Ukraine to be on fire at the same time simultaneously for people to need to care. In fact, I would say the fact that cities like Kiev can live like this to some extent is a success of the money we've sent over, like Patriot air defense systems. But as for the money amounts, this is just wrong. Look, let's just assume that the $900 from the victims of Maui is correct, which, by the way, it isn't. Number one, just because you take, let's say you take a certain amount of money from the budget, that money is not equally spread out amongst all taxpayers. We have a progressive tax code. Certain people pay more money than other people. Also, it's not just income taxes in the way we make our money. There's also sales taxes. There's also business taxes. There's also taxes on things like stock buybacks. And there's a bunch of other taxes that the government makes money off of. Not to mention, much of the aid that we sent over is stuff that we've made decades ago. I'll give you an example. The M113 troop carriers. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this. If you guys are big Vietnam movie buffs, then you probably have. We've sent hundreds of these things over. Hundreds of these things over. These things went into production in 1960 and went out of production in 2007. We're not even supposed to use them anymore. We're putting them out of use. We're replacing them with Bradleys and more modern infantry fighting vehicles and transport vehicles. So we're literally not using these, and they're going to sit on tarmacs, rotting away. Rotting away. We were using these in Vietnam. My grandfather in his late 60s was getting transported around things like this. And you're telling me that this is the same thing? Taking this and sending it to the Ukrainians is the same thing as taking $700 to $900 from somebody from Hawaii? No. Number one, when we sent it, how do we mark it down? We mark it down as the original construction price, which is already dishonest because this thing has devalued over time. 60 to 70 years of shelf life will do that. Not to mention the innovations that have been done since then. So the amount of value that it was when we first built it is not the same amount of value that it has tonight. It has a different value. It's not worth the same. It's worth less. So already counting it and its original construction value, I already think that's dishonest. Also, we can't use this in any other capacity. Some people, when they talk about these monies, they're talking about money as if, and the Heritage Foundation is doing this, as if it's a lump sum. We can't convert this into money. We can't convert this into that original fund, that original amount of money that is reportedly what they say we sent over to Ukraine. We can't. The most we could do is like scrap this for like scrap, but that's going to make us basically nothing. It would be relatively worthless to us. The main actual financial cost when it comes to these things right here would be the tiny repairs we might have made before sending them. Many of them we probably sent over and let them deal with the repairs. Maybe training people on how to use them. But mostly it's probably going to be transportation cost. Literally just moving them. is the cost to U.S. taxpayers. And that certainly isn't the amount of money that people originally put on this transport carrier when we sent over. And this is just one weapon system. There are a lot of weapon systems like this. So no, I don't think if we sent the M113 troop carrier over to Maui that it would have saved anybody. I do think that we could have possibly sent more to Maui. Also, on the other end of this equation, outside of the fact that the amount of money that they're saying we sent to the Ukrainians is incredibly dishonest, the amount of money he's saying Biden gave the victims of Hawaii is incredibly dishonest. If we're going to include the original price values of troop carriers that are not worth the amount we're saying it's worth anymore, but we're pretending it's worth that amount, and we couldn't convert it into money, but we're going to pretend like it's money. If we're going to count that, how are we not including the hotel costs for every night that the administration has purchased rooms in hotels for those who have lost their homes? Are we just going to include like the lump sum cash deposits when we talk about the people of Maui? But when we talk about the Ukrainians, we're going to talk about every nut and every bolt as if it was its original value sent over in raw cash? This is incredibly dishonest framing from the Heritage Foundation. Incredibly dishonest phrasing. They're not only dishonest when it comes to what they choose to frame from both disasters, and they're both disasters, both deserving of attention, both deserving help. The Heritage Foundation is like, screw the Ukrainians, but I also think there's would be a decent chance if we're talking about housing reform and what would be necessary to make sure that nobody loses, that everybody has a home, they wouldn't be in favor of stuff like that. But the Heritage Foundation's already being dishonest when it comes to what pictures it shows and the examples they use. They're being dishonest when it comes to the amount of money we've sent the Ukrainians and how it's being presented. They're trying to keep it simple and sweet for their narrative. And they're being dishonest about the amount of resources that have been allocated to the people of Hawaii that have suffered from the fire. If you're going to include the original value of the troop carriers we're sending over and pretending like it's hard cash, the least you can do is include hotel costs and other things when we're talking about the victims of Hawaii. Point is, if you were to do the math honestly, the average person in Hawaii has probably benefited more directly. I mean, the average person who suffered from this tragedy has benefited more directly, direct assistance from the federal government, than probably the average Ukrainian. The math they're doing here is not only wonky, it's inherently dishonest. I wonder what the Heritage Foundation is a perfect example of, like, we need to stop sending our money over to Ukraine. Oh, so we spend it here at home? No. Even if it was strictly money we gave them, it would have only been $13.56 per person in the US. If we had sent over another 45 billion. Yeah, no, the amount of money they're saying that we've spent or sent is like, I don't know where they're getting that money amount from. I really don't. All these money amounts and aid amounts that people speculate and say we've sent over, they're always so unbelievably inaccurate. They're like off by like 1.5 miles every time. Not even close. And it keeps happening, man. It keeps happening time and time again.